Who wants to ask about Afghanistan?
Go to Afghanistan now.
Senator Ludlam.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Just along the lines of some of the previous lines of questioning on Afghanistan. Air Marshal, the 400 personnel gross that remain in Afghanistan approximately, once you net out the transition staff and personnel, who's left there representing the SOTG? What remains of that presence?
So there will be a couple of areas. We'll still have some N beds within, and we're talking about next year, so up until the end of 2014. There will be some N beds in some of the command elements that are over there. And then the other area will be up to 18 Special Forces personnel working in the headquarters of the GDP-SU, which is General Directorate of Police Special Units, which is NDS unit in Kabul. And they'll be providing that training advising role.
Okay. So at the present time, and if you could walk us through this element of the transition, because I don't think it's been particularly well canvassed as our regular forces are moving out with this sort of additional surge of transition staff and personnel to get them out. Just walk us through, firstly, at the present time, are those special operations troops still conducting active missions, or are they withdrawing to a mentoring and training role?
So I don't want to get into the actual what they're doing from an operational
I'm not going to ask you to draw out a map, but are they still in harm's way?
They are still, and still, that's still a risk area, but they are still in harm's way, not like they were before. They are providing an advisory role for NDS forces in Uruzgan, but you would expect that as we transition and draw down the Tarankot support network, their ability to get out and about will start to come down as well. It doesn't mean they can't, they still can, but it will start to match our resources on the base.
Okay, so they're in transition as well, and this, I suppose, may be a change of policy. The last major statement I saw from Prime Minister Gillard and Defence Minister Smith was that it appeared as though their role would remain virtually unchanged, even as the rest of our forces there drew down. So is that categorically not the case?
I think there would have been caveats in the statements made by the Minister and the previous PM. If there's a role. So we work closely with the USAF and US, and we work closely with in ISAF here to make sure that there is a meaningful role for any of our forces that are in Afghanistan. In that consultation, we've come to the conclusion that next year the best place to put our forces is in that advisory training role with the GDPSU.
Okay, so eventually they would be expected to be operating out of Kabul and not still on active missions in Uruzgan or Helmand?
No, when we transition out of Uruzgan, we're transitioning out of Uruzgan.
Okay, I suspect that might be a change of policy since last time we had this conversation, that's all.
Not sure it's a change of policy. Again, I'd have to check with the statement you've got on what the caveats were around that, the context of it.
All right, understood.
But as you'd expect, this is fluid. It's a fluid environment over there as we do transition out.
Yeah, but what governance agreements or what agreements overall govern their activities in Afghanistan? Because the training or the mentoring or the working back as embeds from Kabul is completely different to helicoptering into Helmand and getting into trouble. At what point will they cease those sort of operations?
They will still go into the field in a limited capacity with the GDPSU, I would understand. But the size of operations that you're talking about now will cease when we transition out of Uruzgan.
Okay. So paint us a picture of end of 2014 if everything proceeds as you expect. How many Australians are left in Afghanistan and in what capacity?
End of 2014?
Yeah.
We haven't finalised that yet. That's still a decision for government.
Okay. All right.
So I'm only talking at the moment for next year up until the end of 2014.
Yeah. Okay. But it's still not clear who we might have left there and what kind of role they'll be playing.
No, but I think the shape that you're seeing now, if we were to continue, which we will, we're committed to working with Afghanistan to ensure their security. I think the shape that you're seeing next year, it shapes our future contribution as well.
Okay. But we could expect, it's entirely reasonable to expect that by this time next year that we would still have Australian Special Operations troops in the line of fire, rather than back in Kabul undertaking training and mentoring.
No. We're talking about 18 Special Forces, up to 18 as a part of the GDPSU. As a part of an advisory role, they may well go into the field with them. I'm not saying they won't. I'm not sure of the exact task that they'll do day to day, but you won't see them doing that as a formed unit like you see now.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the present time, they are still undertaking those sorts of activities, though, aren't they?
As required, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Who provides them with air support and AME and the other sort of ancillary support? Is that
exactly as previously the ISAF forces?
Okay. They're still operating out of Tarankot at the present time?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Will that camp be formally dismantled or handed over at some point?
It's in the process of that now, and it will be handed over at the end of the year.
This year?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you very much. Do you have an estimate at the table of the total cost of the Afghanistan war to the Australian taxpayer since we first deployed?
I don't have it right here, but we will be able to work for that. If I can take that on notice, please.
Yep. Yeah. I'm happy for you to take that on notice, and rather than maybe being tempted to come back with a single figure, if you can just break out for us the components of the cost.
We would have the defence costs. We would have the defence costs, but we wouldn't have necessarily the costs that are contributed by other parts of government.
By other parts of government, understood. If you can indicate for us where those negative spaces are, where you haven't gone, you don't have to necessarily account for them, but just indicate where they are. Thank you. Are you able to categorise for us injuries suffered by ADF members as partially or fully incapacitating? Or do I need to go and talk to veterans to get that information?
Are you looking at numbers?
Yeah.
In there? If it happened in service, we could probably draw that data. If it happened after their service, then that would be DVA.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Could you, on notice, I know you don't have this with you at the table, could you provide us with those numbers on notice, please?
Yes.
In service?
Yep.
And lastly, for me on this matter, how many schools did we build in Afghanistan?
Hang on, I'll see if I can find that. I can take that on notice. I do have it somewhere in my...
If you could, it's a two-part question. I'm interested to know, so there's reporting, the open source reporting, that a reasonable number of the schools that were built by the ADF are dismantled by the Taliban as rapidly as you can construct them. So I'm interested in how many we built and how many, to your knowledge, are still in use.
Okay, we'll take that on notice, except they may not have been built by the ADF. They might be built by Australia. So it could be a provincial reconstruction team.
Yeah.
It could be, but we can take that on notice.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And finally, recognising the difficulty of classification and that these people don't carry around membership cards, but how would you characterise the force strength of the Taliban in the areas that we're withdrawing from?
The force strength?
Yeah, well, what's left of it?
I'd say it's variable.
Variable.
Because the Taliban do move around. There's no doubt that the south and the east are still the areas where Taliban are more active than anywhere else. But it would be difficult to get an assessment of the force numbers because they do move in and out.
And it's heavily seasonal, isn't it? But at the height...
It is seasonal, that's right.
Yeah, at the height of what they call the fighting season.
Mm-hmm. I don't have those numbers available.
Okay.
But I can tell you, and as I said before to the Senator, the ANSF 205, 4 Brigade 205 Corps in Aruzgan have stood up to whatever numbers have faced them there. And they've finished on top at the end of the 2013 fighting season. So they've proved themselves capable to be able to operate against the Taliban forces that are mustered against them.
Thanks very much for your time. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.